CPAs aren't just your accountants, they're trusted advisors, and they help many businesses grow, develop, expand, and succeed. And so I think in that respect, they will likely be, just like some of the investment advisors, sort of a first point of contact.
Welcome to Rise and Stride, where we empower you to take your next step in an ever-changing business landscape. Here's your host, Denise LeDuc-Frumming, President and CEO of the California Society of CPAs.
Hello and welcome to another episode of Rise and Stride. With me today is Gabriela Kusch, CEO of the Global Digital Asset and Cryptocurrency Association, also known as Global DCA, a global self-regulatory association for the digital asset and cryptocurrency industry. Prior to becoming CEO of Global DCA in April, Gabriela was a member of the organization's board of directors for nearly 2 years. And in her nearly 20-plus year career in financial services public policy, has held positions with various governmental and regulatory bodies, including the U.S. Government Accountability Office and International Federation of Accountants. She also has worked for Grant Thornton, the Federal Insurance Deposit Corporation, World Bank Group, and Corona Corporation. So thank you so much, Gabby, for joining us today. I am delighted to be here with you and having this conversation.
Well, I'm delighted to be here as well, Denise. This really is a pleasure. And it's such a unique opportunity to blend both of my CPA accounting background and a lot of what I'm doing now in the digital asset space.
Well, this is, near and dear to my heart too. And I've been talking about this with other associations and just was at a Digital Now conference where we talked about the metaverse, Web 3.0, and all of this. And I felt like when I was done, my head was going to explode. There was just so many new things. So I'm glad to be here with you so that you can help decipher everything and make it simple. So looking forward to the conversation. So maybe first we could start with just, digital assets and cryptocurrency has certainly been something that's been top of mind and almost like a futuristic topic for some of us for many years. So talk to us a little bit about the association, your mission, and kind of what you're looking to achieve.
Sure. It goes back a little bit into, what my experience has been and a lot of the work that I've done. So, I'm kind of I like to say a little bit of an accounting superhero, in that I spent the majority. Thank you. Accountants are cool too. But I spent a lot of my time going into emerging and developing countries, helping to create the foundations of capitalist systems. And that included creating professional accountancy organizations. Okay. And so these were entities that we're all probably familiar with, our state societies like Cal CPA or the American Institute of CPA as well. Every country needs that bedrock of transparency and accountability in order to facilitate capital markets. And so a lot of what I did was about industry mobilization, bringing people together, creating good governance systems so that these entities could really be sort of the step up that many of these economies needed when they were looking at economic growth, job creation, and some of the social outcomes that they wanted to have. And, again, because I always like an underdog, I went to some of the poorest of the poor countries. And that meant that I was always in the periods, around economic and financial sector transformations. So dealing a lot with in the Middle East and North Africa, post-Arab Spring countries that were trying to raise up solid governance institutions. And then in the Gulf countries, trying to create global financial centers of excellence. And then in Eastern Europe and Central Asia, where we were transitioning economies away from communist control systems over to capital markets. So we call these VUCA environments, or volatile, uncertain, complex, and ambiguous. And, it strangely made me uniquely suited for a lot of what we see going on right now in terms of the digital asset space. So it's not necessarily an emerging economy, but it is an emerging industry area. And so it has a lot of the same milestone markers that you would find when you're maturing an industry. And, a lot of the same approaches that we would take when you have these economic and financial sector transformations, The marks of that are things like it's going to hit multiple verticals in your economy. You're going to see the fact that current legal and regulatory frameworks are not well suited to what's happening. You have rapid evolution and, a significant amount of flexibility for new products, services, and concepts that are coming forward. And so, having worked in, 50 different countries around the world, and we did kind of a count of those that I feel I could actually take credit for, but with associations of accountants, like something like 28 of them to help either establish or to grow them. It was kind of a natural fit to sort of step in. And about, 2 years ago, we met a group of interested industry professionals who were looking to kind of solve some of the challenges and kind of said, we look a lot of times as the profession towards self-regulation in these spaces. And this is a very unique and well-suited approach to make sure that we have consumer protection, market integrity, and then also the balance with innovation.
It's a fascinating industry. It really is. There's so many different elements. And I loved what you said about accounting superhero. So we have this campaign now that Taika Dennis, who's our current chair, has coined the coolest CPA, the coolest profession around. So we have buttons, we have stickers, we have everything. So I really liked how you started that out, and I'll have to tell her that because she will love it. Just, maybe you can also give us just layman's terms when you talk about digital assets, cryptocurrency, really what that entails. We've heard a lot about Bitcoin, Ethereum, blockchain, all of that. How does that kind of fit together? Because you have so many insights into this.
Sure. So when we talk about digital assets, again, understand that a lot of the definitions of these aspects are still being created, right? And that's where you're also going to see a lot of the initial kind of steps in terms of legal and regulatory ambiguity. So taxonomy is still an area that needs to be refined out. And, that's normal and it will take time. But the hope is that there is a harmonized approach to defining some of these so that it can harmonize across legislation and support professionals like yourself and others at Cal CPA in engaging. So what do we mean when we talk about digital assets? So digital assets, at the nearest, you probably have seen and heard of Bitcoin or Ethereum. Okay. So that's one type of cryptocurrency. There's also stable coins. So this is where you might see your USDC Circle or your Paxos, your Binance USD, and some of the others that are pegged to actual assets. So these are high quality assets that they're looking to ensure, maintain, and retain a stable value over time, even with market volatility. Okay. When we go into beyond cryptocurrencies, so that all falls under one kind of bucket, but everybody comes under the umbrella of digital assets. And so that includes when we talk about things like non-fungible tokens or NFTs. And when we talk about, crypto, so something like Bitcoin or Ethereum, really what you're talking about is a unit of exchange, an account that is based upon blockchain technology or DLT. And it usually involves cryptography as part of its, unit of form. And it moves and is transacted in real time with immutability. And all of these present opportunities for having efficiency, effectiveness in terms of, the movement and settlement of transactions. So that's kind of what we mean when we talk about digital assets broadly. You have kind of a broader space. When we talk about cryptos, it's really about like those that, again, at this point, self-define as cryptocurrencies, and that includes both your traditional as well as your stable coins.
The stable coins was something I heard about a couple of weeks ago too, and I did not even realize something like that existed, which gave me a little more comfort because my son keeps telling me you have to buy cryptocurrency or Ethereum or what's the other one, Solana. There's another one out there, and I have to get a digital wallet and I have to do all this. It's like,
Your son is very fussy.
It's a lot. He's like, you need to do this. It's a lot to absorb. So thank you for helping with that. Another piece. So we came across in preparation for this interview, I will say, we came across an article where you were quoted saying, decentralized finance regulation requires a mindset shift, which I think the whole new economy does, away from the concept of cop on the beat and towards the concept of community management. And I think that's right on when I think about blockchain and really how we're going to have to work together on managing that and the governance piece. So can you elaborate on that? That's a great quote.
Oh, thank you. Well, yeah, so let's pretend that we look at the way that we regulate now. We're looking at a centralized regulator that has a point of focus on a centralized entity. Okay, be it an exchange, be it, an FCM, you have a one-to-one relationship and you have the ability to target actions, sanctions, fines on that entity. Okay. When you move into a more decentralized space, you may have communities of actors now, as opposed to a formal corporate structure that engage in an ecosystem. And so the approach really needs to shift, almost as we see with the philosophy around medicine. The philosophy around regulation has to change. It can't just be after the fact. It can't just be a reactionary process. And because this is such an emerging industry, you can do that. You can help to shape the direction that it takes. So creating pathways of least resistance in terms of helping to incentivize, to enhance capacity, to support compliant building from the beginning, and really to work with almost in a public-private partnership between government and regulators and the underlying industry in order to ensure that you're minimizing those incidences of, consumer harm or market disintegrity, and you're really helping to amplify, incentivize, and to support the development of robust systems like regulation technologies that can make efficient and effective oversight and surveillance, that we are, appropriately addressing the opportunities for AML modernization, okay, that helps to create a more flexible and I think targeted and perhaps more sophisticated approach that eliminates some of the challenges that we've had around, lack of access to finance and lack of financial inclusion. And so these are some of the things, like when we talk about what it means to regulate, yes, there will always be some element of an enforcement or inspection system, but I think it's like recalibrating the dial away from, say, like 70 to 80% on, gotcha moments, and pushing it towards 70 to 80% on working with communities to really build right and to help, like I said, to create those pathways and channels and to support building right the first time.
I like that, going from the gotcha to more of a collaborative, it sounds like, approach going forward. So what would be your advice to CPAs that are out there that maybe have limited knowledge or and need to help their clients really navigate some of this? What would be kind of some tips or advice you would have for them?
So I think, in the first instance, there's a number of, professional associations that offer as part of your CPD. We all have CPD requirements on an ongoing basis. Be sure to keep yours current.
We love that plug. Thank you.
I know. I'm like, as long as I'm going to do this, we'll help you with your compliance system.
Thank you.
You're welcome. I wasn't paid for that spot either, but
no, nothing.
I would say, look, make sure that you look at some of the programs that are offered by Cal CPA, by other CPA societies, by the AICPA. There are so many, strong foundational programs that exist today that can really help you along those lines. Number two, a lot of the associations have, as well as like Wall Street Blockchain Alliance, as well as ours, Global DCA, we have resources on an ongoing basis for people who are in accounting and taxation, including an accounting and taxation working group that does sort of semi-monthly, regularly, different discussions on how exactly you would approach accounting or auditing of some of these more technical issue areas. Because one piece is going to be theoretical and give you a foundation of knowledge, but the next piece is, now that you have that foundation of knowledge, how do you convert that in practice, right? So I think that's another piece. And then, if you're plussing up and you're really trying to, convert over, we also have our Global DCA certification program. So that's something that if you're looking to kind of transition as a professional, this is an increasingly important area of your work. It may make sense to invest in like a professional certificate. So those are just some ways that I would encourage people to kind of look. And at the very least, I think as a first step, we always tell people to read the Satoshi Nakamoto white paper for Bitcoin. Because even if you don't agree with Bitcoin, or you don't, maybe that's not even the focus that your clients are on, it provides a really solid basic beginning like thesis around blockchain technology. And so that's usually the first thing that people are encouraged to kind of look at to understand what blockchain actually is. And then from there, they can plus up and kind of deep dive in as is needed.
That's a great first step, because I was going to ask you, what's the first thing someone should do? And we will include that in the podcast so that our readers can access that, because that would be
Perfect.
great.
Yeah.
And it sounds like there's, on the continuum, there's the one step all the way to the certificate, which I think is great, because you really need to understand this world. It's not going away. It's here to stay. So just a question on maybe what are the opportunities you see out there and some of the challenges, and what excites you about the future? Is there anything that scares you?
Oh, yeah. Well, lots of things, right? So I think if we're looking at, some of the opportunities that are out there, I think there's a lot of, at least initially, a lot of fear amongst, different professionals. And I'm just going to quote one of our member firms, Crow, who has this amazing advertisement on the streets of Chicago, which is like, companies fear digital assets. And then it crosses it out and it's like leading companies recognize opportunities in digital assets. And so I think, some of that is about helping people understand that, maybe this has been sort of an ongoing feeling, both within your, CPA firm or within some of your clients. And now they're trying to transition and come over. And so they're going to go to a point of trust when they're trying to understand how to engage. And CPAs aren't just your accountants, they're trusted advisors, and they help many businesses grow, develop, expand, and succeed. And so I think in that respect, they will likely be, just like some of the investment advisors, sort of a first point of contact where you might just have someone pick up the phone and say, hey, what do you think about? How could I, approach this? And so I think that represents an opportunity for the CPA profession to position very well in the digital era and to continue, I think, to reinforce what we've been trying to reinforce for many decades, which is this role of the trusted business advisor. I think, I'm going to just kind of share the other side of that coin, which is like, what do I fear? I fear that you may have CPAs who perhaps are a little bit reticent or don't think that they should, appropriately invest in professional education or CPD in order to prepare them for this role. And so there may be incorrect advice that's given or, misunderstandings that are parlayed. And so I think that, it represents both an opportunity in terms of, growing business development and engaging and providing and supporting your clients and perhaps even new and emerging clients, right? Mm-hmm. And I think on the flip side, though, it's one of these things that, again, when we talk about ethics and do professional care, this is an area where, your professional duty is always first and foremost to be educated and able to provide services. And so that's where I say, like, again, the retooling of the CPA workforce, a focus on really advancing professional education in this space and, ongoing learning, because this is so rapidly evolving on such an ongoing basis that if you have clients in this space, you not only need to get a certificate or education, but you need to be doing a lot of this like own research, meaning following the headlines, making sure you're cued in and receiving reports from CalCPA or FASB on any of these like emerging bulletins or issues that are coming forward. Because things just like last week, I issued a bulletin to our members about how FASB now allows for fair market valuation of digital assets. And we know that digital assets are on the research agenda for FASB. And so these are things that if you are a practitioner, you have to know and be closely monitoring these things because it's very rapidly changing.
Yeah, the pace of change is definitely quick. And you know that the young professionals are getting into this. And so they're going to be reaching out, especially on the financial planning side. And there's just so many touch points for this. So, and it's always good to continuously learn. That's extremely important, I think, for CPAs and for everyone. So where do you see the financial market, the financial world going with do you think everyone will have it on their balance sheets? Do you think it'll take over? I mean, it definitely has a presence.
Yeah. So I think that we're going to see sort of a a little bit of a shift in terms of the way that some of our traditional financial sector institutions engage and interact around digital assets. You may see even the leveraging of things like tokens. So payment tokens or tokenized securities. It may be a recognition of internal efficiencies with regards to the movement of, money between and amongst departments or units within certain institutions. I think whenever we talk about blockchain technology, I always kind of laugh because I was like, the CPA profession is such a natural fit for a lot of this because you're talking about ledger-based technology. So this, I think, affords such amazing opportunities for real-time understanding of the financial position of some of these businesses. And all of this will take some time because you're reorienting and transforming internal policies, processes, and procedures. But I think that ultimately, I think that at the very least, we will all be touched by blockchain technology. And then I think the degree to which, of those spectrum areas of digital assets you engage on, whether it's tokens, NFTs, it's cryptocurrencies, it's stablecoins, that may vary, right? But I think, it's definitely going to be transformative, especially when we talk about record keeping, when we look at key industries, even like real estate, insurance, law, and then of course, accounting and finance. But these are some of the big ones that we've definitely flagged as core industries that need to be recognizing the transformation that's undertaken.
I was in real estate before, and there we talked about it quite a bit. I mean, the blockchain from the digital twin, just so many opportunities there, and digital twin too in the financial world. So I find it fascinating. I think your career and what you're doing now sounds just so exciting because you're on the edge of some really interesting shifts.
Yeah. And I think here it's like one of the cool things is that, knowledge is power. And I think that we are definitely shifting into a digital economy, and those professionals that invest in their own education and their ability to kind of manage and stay ahead as leaders in sort of this next wave of digitalization, they're going to be the ones best positioned to, I think, really lead both in terms of the financial sector, but also I think in terms of the accountancy profession overall. So.
Yes, definitely a mind shift that we all have to take here. So let's just switch a bit here from business to personal and just talk to you about this is always fascinating, your career and just some challenges as a woman that you faced in this world, in this industry, and maybe in the world, in this industry, and just advice that you give others.
Sure. So I think from my side, I did a very strange route. Okay. So like mine was, again, international financial sector and like really accountancy reform. Right. So it was a very unique pathway to take. I think some of the challenges were, understanding how to balance, especially during the years when I had children, how to balance that. And I think for me, like I stepped out for a while, everyone else leaned in and I was like, I just need a break and I need to lean out. And I leaned into having small children and staying home with them for a while and just working as a consultant for the bank, honestly. And then I think at a certain point, I recognized that the balance had shifted and I no longer had little babies. And so it was important for me to kind of reinvent myself and to kind of lean back into who and what I wanted to become. And I think that one of the most important pieces that I learned from this is that nobody chooses you until you choose yourself. Meaning that like I had to really believe in myself to do a lot of this before anybody else would believe in me, because making the shift and I was coming from the World Bank, but coming from public to private sector, coming from, Washington, D.C. to Chicago, and then coming from stay-at-home mom to full-time employee, I wouldn't, those are three really big changes that even if you had one of them would be really, really hard. And so I went into a lot of interviews where people were like, well, you're so qualified and we love you, but we just don't know what to do with you. Right. And they kept saying it over and over again, like, you're not good at just one thing. And I think it kind of freaked people out for a bit. And then it was like, after a while, I started to realize that like, maybe the reason I didn't fit in was because I wasn't meant to. Right. And so it was the accounting profession that actually kind of saw that. I came back into the International Federation of Accountants as the principal of strategic initiatives. I was given a lot of autonomy to kind of leverage, strategic planning and thinking in order to kind of craft out, some of the core areas of focus, including digitalization. And I think that that's one of the beautiful things about my former employer, IFAC. And also, I think just about this industry, that it is so open to women and willing to, kind of look at what your skills are and think about non-traditional candidates with new eyes. And I think that, that's sort of my tale.
Mm-hmm. You had a lot of key items in there, and one thing, I don't think there's any straight path. And I tell a lot of young professionals that there isn't really a straight path. I think all of us have a kind of a zigzag to get where we want to go. And that's okay, because sometimes you have to take a step back, as you said, and then to go forward. And you have to know what you need at a certain point in your life. And once you know what that is, then you can move ahead. But I know I stayed at a role for 13 years just because it allowed me to take my son to soccer games, go to see him run track, right? So that was a point in my career where I said, I have to hold where I'm at. And then there'll be another point where I can, move ahead. So I think it's knowing yourself. And what did you say too? You said, nobody chooses you until you choose yourself.
Yeah.
I love that, because it really speaks to you knowing yourself too.
Yeah. And I think, like I said, like for a long time, I kept being like, why can't I just get like a normal job? And then it was like, oh, wait a minute, I'm not a normal person. That would be really weird. So then it was kind of like, well, what does somebody with this bizarre skill set do? And then that's when I kind of like, you sort of let the universe breathe through you. You find opportunities. And if you're open to non-traditional options, that's really where this idea. And like I said, the first time somebody called me a female like co-founder, I like corrected them. I'm like, oh, I'm not a founder. And they're like, did you found an organization? And I was like, oh yeah, I did. And they're like, then you're a female co-founder. And I was like, right. But I never saw myself as that until it kind of just, you just started working, and step by step, that's kind of where you found yourself. So yeah.
Yeah, you have to own it, right? So you're our founder. Yes, absolutely. And it sounds like you're in a really perfect position for yourself. And thankfully, you're there leading, and that's what we need at this point in time. So just thank you for your leadership. And along those lines, we always like to ask, about leadership. And so just a question for you, what do you see as some key traits, characteristics that are important today as leading in this very uncertain times? And what advice would you give new leaders, how they can move ahead?
So everyone always laughs because I quote The Art of War, but it's really not about war. It's about, really influence and peace. And so it's Sun Tzu Ping Fa. And the idea is that leadership is defined as courage. It's defined as trustworthiness, humanity, intelligence, and sternness, right? And so these are the characteristics that I believe define a leader. Now, I'm not going to sit here and tell you the one that I'm bad at or I'm still improving on, but it's I try very hard to hit those kind of core elements, because I think that that's the difference between a manager or even somebody who's in a senior management position and someone who actually leads. It takes a lot of courage to lead. It takes a lot of, I think, humanity and humaneness to have empathy for other people and to be able to recognize differences and to bring people around a table in a common cause. And I think, those would be the characteristics that I would focus on. In terms of like management style, I don't know if you've already guessed it, but I'm a huge supporter of the no assholes rule. Can I say that on the air?
Sure, go for it.
Yeah, it doesn't matter if you're like amazingly intelligent. Like if you can't get along with people, if you're not somebody that can be a good person, you can teach somebody anything. I could teach you blockchain. I could teach you accounting. I cannot teach you to be a good person. That's it.
Mhm.
So sometimes when people say to me, I can't find any good workers, I'm like, you can if you're willing to train people. And the truth is, you might get someone 10 times better if you just looked for a good person and somebody who is motivated, willing to work, trying to improve themselves, and a team player. And if you have that, then everything else is stuff that you can teach someone.
Mhm.
But you can't teach them how to be a good person.
So true. That's good words of wisdom, Gabby. So, and I really like what you said about, courage, because I always think a great leader takes people where they don't want to go. And you have to be have the courage to do that. And you have to be that person that can lead and that people believe in, because that's not something you teach, to your point. Love that. So many, you said what? Courage, trust, be stern. What are the?
See this. It's courage, trust, humaneness, intelligence, and then sternness. Yeah.
Yeah, those are good because they all speak to many different elements. So many good tips and insights that you shared with us today. I hope everyone listens to this a couple times, not to hear me, but to hear you and take down some of your words of wisdom. But just such a pleasure to talk with you today. I know we'll be having other conversations because I can think of many ways we could work together and collaborate. And when I'm in Chicago, I should definitely look you up and have lunch.
Oh yeah, we'll go get deep dish pizza or a giant Chicago hot dog. So
sounds great. So what's your favorite? This is the most important question. What's your favorite deep dish pizza?
Okay. So no one else in my family agrees with me, but I am like 100% Lou Malnati's deep dish pizza. And now like the whole like Giordano's family will hate me, but like, yes, it is 100% Lou Malnati's. I don't accept any other substitutes. And, the Chicago versus New York City pizza. Well, I've lived in both and had both pizzas, and Chicago is hands down better. So I will just leave it there. I've never had California pizza. I'm sure it is wonderful.
I have never had it either. But I will say that Lou Malnati's is my favorite as well. And I had this debate we had the AICPA council meeting, and I had the debate with one of the leaders, and I still say Lou Malnati's. So thank you. I appreciate that.
Thank you very much.
But it's been a pleasure. Looking forward to seeing you in Chicago at some point.
Well, excellent. Same here.
Thank you.
Rise and Stride is produced by the California Society of Certified Public Accountants. To learn more, visit calcpa.org.